Steve McQueen, I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. What do I mean by that? I mean, I only talk to transportation professionals on this show, as well as my twice-a-week long-form podcast, so we can put the right information out there that you can apply, utilize, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. It's one of the many reasons why I proudly fly this American flag behind me every single day. A, we're the greatest nation on earth, but B, I'm living my American dream, and I'm going to help each and every one of you live yours as well. I got a special guest that we're going to bring on here today, and we're going to talk about what he's got going on. We're going to talk about why you guys should be following him and all his media growing empire that he's got going on, man. He's one of my favorite follows in the industry, to say the least. But before we do anything, as always, you guys, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub, vhubapp.com. Whether you're a broker, carrier, or a shipper, we all need access to trailers. And to my small fleets, my owner ops out there, you guys should never have to shut your operation down because you guys have a trailer in the shop. And the best to move these trailers. That's right. You get paid the revenue on top of loading these trailers out to move all of these all around. So what they got going on, you guys, is they have a bunch of dry vans out in Stoughton, Wisconsin, needing to get over to Milton, Ontario. And with this, you guys, you can create an enterprise drop trailer pool at your shippers, right? Like, everybody's looking out here to try and prospect and get in the door with some larger shippers. This is your way. A lot of them need assets. They need those drop trailers, and you can do that now with VHub. And then they also have the same thing down in Paragould, Arkansas, needing to get up to Mississauga, Ontario. And with this, you guys, it doesn't have to pick up in Paragould, right? Like, you can reposition them and drop them in Nashville or Louisville or wherever your customer's facility is, and they just got to end up over in Mississauga. And then finally, they got a bunch of trailers out in San Diego. They're going all over the country, you guys. They range anywhere from $1,100 to $2,200 per trailer. And these rates do expire on June 2nd, though, you guys. So get on there, because they got a bunch of stuff going out to Chicagoland area, Memphis, Tennessee, Chattanooga, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, Laredo, you name it. Get on there, you guys, vhubapp.com. My friends Stacy Steen and Zach Lonergan, they'll be in the audience. Just do me a favor. Let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Tracy St. Clair, she's watching over on YouTube. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Sonny Sharma, good fucking morning. Thanks for tuning in. Stephen Thompson, good morning. Like I said, Zach's already in here. Michelle McGinnis, good day from Mick Cargo 24/7. And yeah, Zach said that the pricing expires on June 2nd, so hit him up. All right, you guys, I'm going to bring my guest up. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ramel Watley, Truck and Hustle Media in the house. Dude, I'm so excited to have you back on. It's been a minute since we chatted.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. How are you, man? How are you, Chris?
Dude, legitimately living my dream right now, man. As we were talking before we started recording, I'm in the process of building stuff out on my end and figuring it out every single day, which is the best part about jumping out on your own. So, dude, how did Truck and Hustle Media start, man? Like, where did this all come from?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So first, congratulations to you, Chris. I have been watching your growth. You are blowing up all over the place. So, man, salute to you and everything you're doing. And I wish you continued success. I got to start there. Truck and Hustle Media, for anybody who's not familiar, we started as a podcast in 2019. We started out doing virtual interviews just like this. It was strictly audio on like Spotify, Apple, and other, podcasting platforms. And then we started to grow. We got a lot of good feedback. We grew pretty fast just because I feel there's a void in the marketplace for entrepreneurial stories in transportation and logistics. And people were really interested. So we started to double down on our content. We grew into in-person, content and studio type content where we kind of interview people at their offices or wherever they're located. And that kind of 10x'd us. Once we got on YouTube, people started stumbling on our content, and it just kind of really grew our audience. We moved from that into doing live events last year. We do networking events all over the country. And we also did our first conference, which is called Freight Fest, which we are doing again this year, September 28th through October 2nd. So we do several things, man. We produce content. We do live in-person events. We do merch. We're also launching a community very soon in the next 50 to 75 days for entrepreneurs looking to grow their business. So we have a bunch of different verticals, but ultimately we're just looking to add value to the transportation and logistics community and just help small businesses grow. That's really our mission.
Dude, I love it. And I honestly, that's like why I connect with you so much, is because you're out there helping the little guy. You're out there promoting what a lot of these are doing. Cause I mean, I think what was it? You had an episode that you just released this morning, actually, about the dump truck entrepreneur making $18,000 a day only on used trucks and everything. And I love hearing these stories, right? Because it's not, you talk to everything, like, like every single facet of the transportation industry. So it's like, what is, I got to ask, man, like, what's been the most inspiring story? Because like I love interviewing people. I like hearing people's stories and everything. Has there been one that stuck out to you where like, man, that person overcame a lot to get to where they are?
There's tons of stories of, people getting it from, the mud or whatever, for lack of a better word. Right. And that's a lot of the type of stories we like to tell. I don't really particularly have a favorite, but there's a lot of them. Like you said, the gentleman today, came from a lot of different adversity, and he kind of got into the business, his own way. Right. He didn't have the money to necessarily buy brand new trucks. So he bought older trucks, but he was able to, pay those trucks off. And in that, he has higher margins and so forth and so on. People who just come from different backgrounds. I interviewed another dump truck guy not too long ago who came from Jamaica. Right. Yeah. He was in Jamaica. He worked like for corporate, different corporate entities in Jamaica for a very long time, came over to the U.S., started his dump truck company. There's so many different angles, man. And that's what I really like to cover. Like, I really like to pluck out those angles that make the story really interesting and unique. And that's it. And just really tell their story, man. Sit back, try to ask the right questions to get them to kind of spill those nuggets that are going to be able to be, really, really tangible and actionable things for our audience, right? Like things that the audience could take action on next day to improve their business or improve what they're doing. And that's what really the goal is for me. Like, I always want somebody to have a takeaway, not just really just my guest is just kind of talking, above their heads to where they don't have an actual takeaway and they can't, use it for their actual business when it's all said and done.
Yeah. And I think like that's where there's so much value in it, because it's like, dude, I love talking to the people who, and hearing the stories of the individuals who've built, 9-figure companies and everything. But it's like, when you're starting out, like all that information that they put out there is very valuable, but it's almost like, from where you are in your business, it's like, man, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll in 30 days. Like what is the strategy? How is this going to help me right now? And that's why I love hearing individuals who are like, hey, you know what? I just made my first 20 million in this business. This is what I did to get here. And this is what you can do. And then I try and scale it back even more, where it's like, a lot of the audience that I have and a lot of people that listen, yeah, they're from all walks of life in the industry. But the main question I get is, how do I find a shipper? Right? Like I just got here. What do I do? How do I say whatever it is on the phone? And so it's like, I wanted to build up a content catalog based off of, hey, like this is where you start, right? Because a lot of people, they see where the market's at, or they're excited, man. I remember when I first started out, I'm like, oh, this is great. But fuck, before you know it, I'm going to be rolling in millions of dollars. Everything's going to be fucking great. And then reality punches you in the face, and you're running out of money, and you don't know what to do. And it's like, what's next? So that's where a lot of it is it's like, I just want people to know, like, hey, there is an avenue. These are the steps that you need to follow. This is what you can say on the phone. And this is just coming from somebody who has done the job and who's currently doing the job, right? Like, dude, I'm building out my brokerage right now. I'm going through all of the stuff that my audience is going through, the rejection from the shippers, the adversity of just the industry as a whole, right? And it's like, all right, cool. This is what we're going through. This is what we're doing. And that's where I feel like most people gravitate towards, because it's like, it's great listening to the, hey, I'm making $100 million a year, but it's like, well, fuck, I don't even know how to pay my rent. Right? The disparity out there. And that's why I like bringing that different angle to it. And that's what I love about a lot of the stuff that you're out there and the people that you're talking to, because they're like, hey, I've been in that position. 12 months ago. And now these are the steps that I followed to get to where I am today.
Yeah, I love that concept, Chris, of building in public. And I would ask you, man, you know, and maybe this can inspire somebody who's watching, right? Like, where do you draw the courage to be able to build in public and be able to share your ups and your downs? Because a lot of times there's more downs than ups, right? And it's difficult, especially when people see you as a thought leader and people see you as somebody who knows it all. I'm sure people are always in your inbox or, you know, PMing you like, hey, Chris, how do I do this? How do I do that? And the truth is you don't have all the answers, right? But then when you have to expose that side of yourself, where do you draw that courage from?
I think a lot of it is I want to show more of the real side of everything and not just the highlight reel, because I hate that about social media. I hate only showing the wins. Like, yeah, show your wins, man. I want to see somebody post the first time that they were able to buy their first fucking luxury car or their like, I love seeing that stuff. But there's also a real side of this that needs to be exposed as well, because it's not all glamorous. You know, it's not all glamorous. And I'd rather have that story out there, because a lot of it, you know, Ramel, another part of it is it's like, I would rather just put everything out there than ever have to spend a minute defending a version of me that's like not real.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where a lot of it comes from, is because like, I also want people to understand that, hey, we all go through this shit, right? So it's like, if you're going to be following my content, if you're going to view me as a thought leader, or whatever that looks like. And again, I'm just a regular dude who fucks up as much as the next person. I want that story to be relatable, right? Because mainly like when I hit certain levels in business, I want the everyday person to know, well, fuck it. If he can do it, I can fucking do it. Because dude, that's the thing, man. I'm from a working class family in northern Wisconsin, right? Like I don't have a golden parachute. If I don't perform, my family doesn't eat. And I don't want to ever have anything other than that out there, where it's like, hey, you know what? When certain levels are achieved, when certain things are achieved, I want people to know, like, well, fuck it. If he can do it, I can do it. Because
that's right.
That's the way I view the world, where it's like, I see some of these individuals out there who I follow who've built real businesses, large businesses, and that's their message too. They're like, I'm no different than anybody else out there. All right. I have the exact same struggles as you guys do. I have all that. And I'm like, if they're willing to say that, I should be willing to say that and be honest about the levels that I'm at and what I'm facing out there in my businesses.
Yeah. And it does put a certain level of pressure on you to, like, you know, deliver, right? When you know the world is watching, it's like, you know, you want to tell about more wins and losses, obviously, right? So when the world is watching, it definitely makes you show up every single morning, because you know, like, hey, listen, I have to share this stuff at some point. So I want to talk about more good than bad, if possible, right? Because that's what it's about.
But I also think that, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. The biggest problems you think you're facing right now, in a couple of years, you're going to look back and be like, why did I even let that bother me? Like, but it's as you grow, you experience new things, right? And then you learn how to adapt and you learn how to navigate through that. So again, I think like your big issues that most people are having today, after you take a deep breath and wait a couple of months, you're going to look back and be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But it's also,
that's right.
Like, hey, I overcame that, right? Like I overcame that big hurdle. Like, dude, what was the biggest thing in business that you faced that now looking back, you're like, man, why did that bother me? You know,
man, I've faced a ton of stuff in business. I mean, a lot of people don't know that I also I've owned multiple staffing agencies as well. So I do driver staffing, like temp agencies for CDL drivers. And, you know, I tell the story that, you know, my first business, you know, I made in revenue about $1.2 million in the first year, right? Just because of the sheer demand of, you know, what my business model was. However, at the end of the year, I end up owing about $300,000. So how do you make $1 million, but you end up $300,000 in the red? The way that happens is just not understanding business, right? So with me specifically, it was because of workers' comp. I didn't really understand totally how workers' comp was, and just to kind of give you like a quick overview of how it works. You know, when you have an employee, especially in New Jersey, and this is different throughout different states, but workers' comp is about 18%. So for every let's say $100 of payroll you have to pay you have to pay workers' comp $20, right? So when you start a business, you have to project what your workers' comp is going to be. So you have to tell them, hey, we think we'll probably do about $100,000 in revenue, or the driver will have $100,000 in payroll. And based on that number, our workers' comp number will be here. That's how you will establish like your premium, right? So you'll pay that amount and then you'll kind of move forward, and they give you payments. And at the end of the year, they go back, they reconcile, they do a workers' comp audit. So what happened is we under projected because we didn't want to spend a lot of money in the beginning, right? Obviously. So we projected as low as possible because we didn't want to spend a lot of money and we didn't know how the business would do. We ended up doing about 10x probably better than what we thought we would do, right? Because we secured this really cool post office customer that gave us a ton of work. They were about 75% of our business at the time, and they were giving us work every single day, right? They drove our revenue through the roof. And because of that, we made so much money. But during that time, we weren't putting money aside for workers' comp because we thought that these people, we had 1099 contractors for the most part during that time. And we're looking at them as their employees, right? Like, nah, they take care of their own stuff. But when workers' comp comes to reconcile that, if they don't have a workers' comp policy, they're going to your workers' comp for it, right? So at the end, they're doing an audit and they look through all the line items. They're looking at all the payroll. We're like, no, they're contractors. They're like, no, they're not contractors. They're employees, right? You tell them where to go. You assign them the work. They're your employees. Even though you're paying them 1099, they're actually your employees. So all this money that we were spending thinking we're printing money, we end up having to give back to workers' compensation. And meanwhile, we're spending money, right? I'm not from money, right? I'm new in the business. When you start getting money, you start buying, your car kind of levels up. I'm buying rental properties. I'm doing my thing. I'm feeling myself, right? So the money's not there. So we literally had to make a deal with workers' comp over the next 9 months to pay them back. And then what happens is the second year, our business doubles again. So we catch up, and just in catching up, we're still behind because we have to continuously chase this train paying workers' compensation. So saying that to say, like, that's a story of where understanding how business works. I got lucky because I happened to get into a business there was a high demand. So because there was a high demand, I was able to print money, right? But I didn't understand enough about the business, and I made a lot of mistakes. And that honestly was the catalyst for what Truck and Hustle was. Like, man, we have to, understand the fundamentals of business before we get into business and learn from people's mistakes so we don't make the same mistakes. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to start Truck and Hustle. So yeah, man, I've made a ton of mistakes. I've been under a ton of pressure. Still to this day, I'm making mistakes. But, they say pressure creates diamonds. So we just kind of work through it. And I always look at it like, what's the worst that can happen? We're all going to the same place anyway at the end of this road, right? So I'm just going to just keep on fighting, and then we'll see what happens at the end of the day.
Dude, I love that, man. Julia Olaskoga, good morning. I got to get some shout outs here. Carla Isted, good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Lorena Camargo, she says, two of my favorite podcasters.
Hey, Lorena.
She's excited for Freight Fest out there. Alexis Bailey, good morning. She says it's cool to see us together out here. She's watching over on YouTube. Good morning out there to LinkedIn user. Tony Darnell says me. He draws the courage from watching me fail. Tony's a good buddy of mine, man. He doesn't need drayage. He doesn't need drayage, FYI. Julia says it's a good insight here. Show the real, the bad, the ugly. Dylan Turner says, thanks for Giles' time today and good fucking morning. Yeah, dude, I think like that's a big valuable lesson, because it's like, something similar happened to me earlier this year. Like, I have been like, fortunately, I hired a CPA. Like, that was one of the very first things that I did is I got a CPA and I got a bookkeeper in my business, and and talking about this. But then I hit a revenue level last year where my CPA is like, hey man, I want you to pay in quarterly this year. So April 5th or April 18th or whatever was a very big day for me and a very scary day for me this year, because not only did I owe all of my 2022 taxes, I had to pay in a portion of my 23 taxes already. And then on top of that, a couple months later, I got to throw in another portion up there of prepayment and taxes to the government. So, in next month, actually in a couple weeks. But it is, man, it's like you're looking at it and you're like, fuck, we're talking, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And I'm like, fuck, but it's also like, thankfully I put money aside. Thankfully I worked with a CPA, but like, dude, those are big numbers, man. Those are really big numbers. And that's a big dip in your bank account. And it's like, fortunately, I had the money to throw at it, But it's also like that also doesn't take away from the fact that I am investing in my business. I am building stuff out. And, and it's that scary factor that kind of comes along with it. And it's like, it's a lot easier now that I have like consistent revenue coming in to be like, all right, at least I know I got money coming in next month. But it doesn't take away the fear. And it's also like, it's that experience. And that's one thing that I would say out there to anybody who is building up their businesses. And if you are working with a CPA, talk to them about that. And do you foresee me looking that I'm going to have to pay into quarterly taxes? Or to your point on workman's comp, do I have this money set aside for this, you guys? Because again, the feds, the state government, they don't give a fuck.
No, they don't.
They're going to get their money one way.
That's right.
So it's like, you got to be prepared for that stuff.
Nah, and that's a great point, man. The fact that you got a CPA early, and that's like one of the other things in business, you have to set yourself up for success, right? And a lot of times, we shy away from hiring professionals that are going to set us up, set our businesses up soundly, because we feel like we don't have the money to do that early in our businesses. We want to spend that money on an operation or equipment or whatever the case may be. But that is literally the most important thing, man. Make sure you have a good CPA. Make sure you have a good attorney. Right. Just make sure you have those foundational things in place, because you can make all the money in the world. If you don't know how to protect it, or you don't know how to allocate it, or you don't know how to keep it, then it doesn't even matter. You're wasting your time. It's an exercise in futility. Right. So it's so important to get those pieces in place very early in your business. And a lot of people don't do that, right? Yeah. That's something that's not taught. It's usually learned like second business around, like, hold on, let me do this the right time, the right way this time before I screw up like I did the first time, right? So yeah, man, that's a big jewel right there.
So is that what the angle is at Freight Fest, man? Like let's talk about Freight Fest coming up in Houston here.
Yeah.
Another one, Victoria Nilm says, good morning, can't wait for Freight Fest. She's out there watching on YouTube too. So it's like, is that the educational sessions that you're bringing to this? Because again, I think like that's the stuff that most people need to hear, right?
Yep.
It's because for me, it's like, how do we keep people in business? Is that the angle that you're taking? Is that like, kind of walk us through what this is going to look like?
Yes, for sure. So number one, with Truck and Hustle in general, we always target and talk about different niches, right? Yeah. So Freight Fest is an extension of that, right? Where you have an opportunity to talk to different subject matter experts from different niches in transportation and logistics. But we always make sure that we cover all the fundamentals, the basics, right? Yeah. Whether it's just funding, how to get funding, or insurance, factoring, compliance. Those are the things that, regardless of what business you're in, you have to make sure that's sound, or else you're going to go out of business really fast, right? So Freight Fest is an aggregation of all of our past guests and people from our network who we feel could just lend to like these type of topics and just talk, just talk to our attendees about it, right? In a really articulate way. So basically, I just kind of like cover what we did last year, and this year is going to be like what we did last year on steroids. Love it. So last year, Freight Fest was November 2nd through November 4th in Houston, Texas. We literally promoted the event for 3 months. It was coming off of another networking event. We had decided to do Freight Fest before that, but we didn't start really promoting, until about that 3 month time period. Reason being, we're just kind of late, right? Just no excuse. Now, typically a conference takes 6 months to a year to really plan, right? Yeah. And mind you, most people who do conferences, that's like the sole thing they do, right? They do conferences. For us, we're still doing podcast content. We're still, working on a ton of other stuff in addition to planning this conference and this event. So we planned it in 3 months, which this time we had this year we have plenty more time to do it, which is great. And it was, like I said, November 4th through November 2nd. So what I did was I looked through, just what we had, the content that we had delivered throughout the year. And I looked for what was some of the most impactful guests and some of our most impactful people who just kind of lended their expertise to the platform. But I wanted to make it diverse, and I wanted to make sure that we had people speaking from different niches. That's very important to me because, as like right now, the freight market is brutal, right? Like dry vans are taking a hit, reefers are taking a hit. So the important thing now is, how do you diversify? right? So I wanted to make sure that we always talked about diversification and not just focus on just traditional trucking, but we talk about the complete supply chain and how you can kind of, pivot if you need to, because sometimes you got to pivot, right? So basically, last year we had about 30 speakers. We had about 15 to 20 vendors. And it was a three-day run of show. And it kind of ran almost like a concert, man. Everybody would kind of get up for about 30 to 45 minutes and they would just speak to their subject. And then we'd have like time for Q&A. And then after that, we'd kind of have like a break or intermission in between. And then we move on to the next subject. But we kind of set it up to where all the content kind of was very linear, to where it kind of made sense, right? It wasn't like all over the place because we're talking about these different niches, but we started in one particular place. Like, let's say we start, intermodal. We're talking about like air freight. Then we're going to go into like, drayage, and we're going to talk about warehousing and just kind of see how all those things kind of connect, right? So these are all people who actually own warehouses, who do drayage, right? Who run containers. So we're just kind of building the story as we go. And then we just, kind of get into the different niches. We talked about cannabis transportation. We talked cannabis transportation. We talked about government contracting. We talked about ocean freight. We talked about air freight, last mile delivery. We talked about oil and gas. Right. So what you're going to do, what's going to happen when you get to Freight Fest, you're going to be able to get a wide view of just everything that's happening in the supply chain. Right. And you're going to be able to connect with people who are really doing it, like real operators, not people who are talking about doing it, but people who are really operating, right, and building businesses from the ground up. And then you're going to be able to network with them. You're going to be able to ask questions. It's a really family friendly type of environment. Is a lot of love in the room. And, that's the kind of people that we like to bring on the platform, people who just are willing to share their expertise. And then, like I said, on top of that, we're going to make sure that we cover all the fundamentals that you need and that you walk away with really, really actionable things that you can do, man, and implement into your business. Because we know right now the industry isn't in a great place, right? There's a lot of people suffering. So we know it's very important to bring tons of value and tons of actionable content that people can actually act on. We're going to be having shippers there. We're going to be having people you can connect with to make things happen for real. So that's the goal, man. Just really doing what we did last year, taking it to the next level and just making sure that you leave and you get everything you need to kind of move forward in your business. And that's what it's all about.
Dude, I love that. And, that approach is what's needed more than ever, right? Because, I'm a firm believer, success leaves clues. Yes. But it's like, again, what can I do at my 1-2 truck operation or my 3-person operation today to see a meaningful difference out there, and that's what's needed more than ever, because it's, talking about the pivot and talking about like, hey, what are some different angles that you can take? Like if you're getting swallowed up right now, because you know what, at the end of the day, in some of these markets, they're going to be absolutely dominated by larger players. That's why I always advise people to get away from the power lanes, right? Stop going after shit that moves between Dallas and Chicago. It's going to be very hard to compete in those markets and right now. So it is taking different angles to it. And it's just hearing somebody else's perspective. And I think that's what's key is it's like, especially, and when you're building, right? Like, I don't know if you've thought this way, but I've thought this way when I'm building. It's like, you think the walls are fucking closing in on you. You don't know what to do next because you've never experienced it before. And to be able to listen to somebody who's been like, no, I've been here. This is what I did, or this is what I'm doing. That's what's going to keep more and more people in business. I mean, this country is built off of small business. It's built off of entrepreneurs. It's built off of people chasing their American dream. And we got to continue to inundate and flood the market with the right information from people who are like, no, fuck that. Don't listen to that, right? Like, yes, there are some very real things that are going on right now, but that doesn't mean you have to quit. That doesn't mean you have to give up. And those are the messages that I vibe with the most, because it's like, to your point, man, just like you, I don't have a golden parachute. Just like a lot of the people who are watching this and who are going to be listening to this on the replay, they don't have the golden parachute. They got to figure it the fuck out. They got everything on the line. So let's put information out there for it. And that's what I love the most, man. And I know, like, I only keep these shows about 30 minutes because everybody. So how can anybody find out more about Freight Fest? How can they register for the event? Houston, Texas, coming up here later this year.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. So Freight Fest, you can go to freightfest.com, www.freightfest, FREIGHT fest.com. truckandhustle.com. That'll give you all the information that you need to get registered. Also, you can go to truckandhustle.com. That'll lead you to all of our links, all of our social media and so forth. And it'll talk more about Freight Fest there as well. And also we have networking events coming up in Philadelphia. I got to shout that out. We do something called the Reset. July 8th, we'll be in Philadelphia. Like-minded transportation professionals getting together, exchanging business cards. We have brunch. We have a live podcast panel. We have live performances. Just have a really good time. We'll be doing that July 8th in Philly. And then we'll be also doing it on July 29th in Chicago. And that's going to be that. So basically, this is the road to Freight Fest. So we're just out here, man. You can catch us at, some of the other events that's going on. We'll be at Home Delivery World in a couple weeks. We'll be, at the Houston Truck Show coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah. So we're kind of everywhere, man. We're just, we're just doing what we can do to be visible and just continue spreading the gospel, man.
I love it. I love it. And if you guys can't find Ramel, but I'd be shocked. But if you can't reach out to me, I'll pass along all that information and that he said out there, you guys. But that's going to be it for today. I'll have Ramel back on here probably in a couple months, and we'll continue to pump this up there. And as always, you guys, if you guys saw value in what you listened and heard here today, subscribe and share that show. Rank the show if you saw value. If you didn't get value out of it, don't rank it. I believe in value exchange at the end of the day. That's where we're at. We'll be back tomorrow, you guys, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.